The coffee maker gurgled to life at 3 in the morning, same as it had every night this week. Sleep wasn't coming anyway, not with Ayla's suitcase sitting by the front door like some kind of monument to my marriage's collapse. I stood in our kitchen, staring out at the darkness beyond our property line, wondering when exactly everything had gone sideways. "You're up early." Ayla's voice cut through the quiet. She padded into the kitchen wearing her travel clothes, hair already done, makeup perfect, always perfect, even at 3 a.m. "Couldn't sleep," I said, not turning around. "Big day ahead, right? Moving in with Doug for 30 days to help him recover from his mysterious illness." She bristled. I could hear it in the way her breathing changed. "It's not like that, Trent. He's genuinely struggling. Someone needs to help him get back on his feet. And that someone has to be my wife." I poured coffee into my favorite mug, the one Lila had made me in pottery class 5 years ago, back when she still thought I hung the moon. "Funny how his recovery requires you living there full time." "Don't be dramatic. It's temporary." I finally turned to face her. Ayla stood there with her arms crossed, defensive but trying to look reasonable. The same expression she wore during HR meetings at her company when she had to deliver bad news to employees. Professional, cold, calculated. "I'm not being dramatic, I'm being practical." I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened our shared family calendar. "Put the dates in here, for clarity." She blinked, clearly not expecting that response. "What? You said 30 days. Mark it down. Start date, end date. That way we're all on the same page about your timeline." Ayla stared at me for a long moment, probably waiting for the explosion. The angry husband routine, the pleading, the threats to leave if she went through with this insanity. Instead, I sipped my coffee and waited. "Fine." She grabbed her phone and started typing. "There, March 15th through April 14th, 30 days exactly." "Perfect." I watched the calendar update in real time on my device. "Thanks for being so organized about it." The front door opened and our 17-year-old daughter Lila walked in, backpack slung over one shoulder. She'd obviously been waiting outside for the right moment to make her entrance. Everything was a performance with these two. "Dad, you need to be reasonable about this," Lila said without preamble. "Mom's trying to help someone who's sick. That's what good people do." "Absolutely," I agreed. Very charitable of her. Lila frowned, thrown off by my calm response. She'd probably rehearsed this whole speech about family loyalty and supporting each other through difficult times. "So you're okay with it?" "I'm okay with a lot of things. Your mom's made her choice. I respect that." Ayla's eyes narrowed. She knew me well enough to recognize when I was too calm. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means exactly what I said. You've decided to spend 30 days living with your ex-boyfriend to nurse him back to health. I think that says everything that needs to be said about our marriage." "He's not my ex-boyfriend," Ayla snapped. "We dated briefly in college. That was 20 years ago." "Right, ancient history, just like our wedding vows, apparently." Lila stepped between us. "Dad, stop being such a jerk about this. Mom's doing something nice for someone who needs help. Why can't you just support her?" I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. When had she become so much like her mother? That same self-righteous tone, the same ability to twist any situation to make herself the victim or the hero. Never just a person making questionable choices. "I am supporting her," I said quietly. "I'm not stopping her. I'm not arguing. I even helped her organize the timeline. What more support do you want?" "You could try being understanding," Lila shot back. "I understand perfectly. Your mother has decided that Doug Hennessy's recovery is more important than our marriage. She's prioritized his needs over our family. I understand that completely." Ayla grabbed her suitcase. "I'm not doing this with you right now. We'll talk when I get back." "Sure we will." She paused at the door. "You're not going to stop me?" "Nope. Have a great time playing nurse." "God, you're impossible." Ayla looked at Lila. "I'll call you later, honey." Don't let your father poison you against me while I'm gone. And then she was gone, leaving me alone with my daughter, who looked at me like I'd just kicked a puppy. I can't believe you, Lila said. She's trying to help someone, and you're acting like she's abandoning us. She is abandoning us. For 30 days. She put it in the calendar herself. It's temporary. We'll see. Lila stormed off to her room, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I finished my coffee in the sudden quiet, then opened my laptop and started taking screenshots of everything. The calendar entry, the text messages about Doug's recovery, the family group chat where Ayla had announced her plans like she was going on a business trip. By sunrise, I had documentation of everything. By 9 a.m., I'd filed for divorce. My workshop in the basement had always been my sanctuary. Power tools, half-finished projects, and a workbench that had belonged to my grandfather. It's where I went when I needed to think, and right now I had a lot of thinking to do. I pulled up our household management system on my tablet. Over the years, I'd set up everything to run through interconnected apps and services. Shared calendars, automated bill paying, school communications, medical records, home security, even the smart thermostat. Ayla had access to most of it, but I was the primary administrator on almost every account. Time to change that. I started with the school system. Lila was 17, a senior, and needed parental authorization for various activities throughout the year. I updated the emergency contacts, removing Ayla's work number and Doug's address. Then I sent a formal letter to the principal explaining that Mrs. Ardell would be unavailable for the next 30 days due to personal circumstances, and all communications should be directed to me. Next came the medical records. Our family doctor, Lila's specialists, even the dentist. I updated the contact information and removed Ayla's access to the patient portals. If she wanted to be involved in our daughter's health care from Doug's house, she could call me directly. The home automation system was next. I removed Ayla's profile from everything. Security codes, smart locks, garage door access, even the streaming services. If she was living somewhere else for 30 days, she didn't need access to our house. My phone buzzed with a text from Richie, my best friend since high school, and the only mechanic in town I trusted with my truck. Heard Ayla moved in with Doug. You okay, man? I typed back. Never better. Want to grab lunch at the diner? Hell yes. Noon? See you there. I spent the rest of the morning methodically removing Ayla from our digital life. Bank account notifications, credit card alerts, utility companies, insurance providers. Everything got updated with my contact information only. By the time I was finished, Ayla Ardell effectively no longer existed in the Ardell household ecosystem. My phone rang around 11. Ayla's number. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again 5 minutes later. Then again. By the fourth call, I turned the phone off entirely. Whatever crisis she was having at Doug's house could wait until I felt like dealing with it. The Riverview Griddle sat on Main Street between the hardware store and the post office, a classic small-town diner that had been serving the same menu since 1987. I arrived early and grabbed our usual booth in the back corner where Richie and I could talk without the whole town listening in. Richie showed up right on time, his work clothes still smeared with grease from the morning's jobs. He slid into the booth across from me and signaled Martha, the waitress, for coffee. So, he said without preamble, what's the real story with Ayla and Doug? She says she's helping him recover from some unspecified illness. Needs 30 days of her undivided attention, apparently. Richie snorted. That's interesting, considering I saw Doug at Murphy's bar last weekend looking perfectly healthy. He was buying rounds for half the place and bragging about some big business deal he's working on. Business deal? Something about expanding his car lot. Apparently he's got an investor lined up. Richie leaned forward. You want to know what I think? I think Doug's illness is financial, and your wife is the cure. That made more sense than anything Ayla had told me. Doug Hennessy ran a used car lot on the outskirts of town, the kind of place that specialized in vehicles with questionable histories and creative financing arrangements. He'd been struggling for years, always one step ahead of bankruptcy. "She doesn't have access to our money," I said. "I handle all the finances." "What about her salary? Her savings account?" I thought about that. Ayla made good money in HR, and she'd always been secretive about her personal savings. She called it her independence fund, money she kept separate from our joint accounts. I'd never pushed the issue because it seemed reasonable for both spouses to have some financial autonomy. Now I wondered if that autonomy was funding Doug's recovery. "There's something else," Richie said, lowering his voice. "My cousin Danny works at the bank. He mentioned seeing Doug making some large deposits lately, cash deposits." "How large?" "Large enough that the bank had to file paperwork. You know, the kind they file when someone's moving suspicious amounts of money around." I sat back in the booth, processing this information. So Doug wasn't sick, he was broke. And somehow Ayla had gotten involved in helping him solve his financial problems. The question was whether she was just being naive and generous, or if there was something more going on. My phone buzzed with a text. I'd turned it back on during the drive over, and now I had 7 missed calls from Ayla and a string of increasingly frantic messages. "Why aren't you answering your phone?" "The school called me about Lila's field trip permission slip. They said I'm not authorized anymore." "What did you do to the house? None of my codes work. Call me back right now." I showed the messages to Richie, who grinned. "Looks like she's discovering the new reality." 30 days, I said. She wanted 30 days to play house with Doug, so for 30 days, she gets to figure out how to be a parent and a wife from his place. "What about Lila?" That was the hard part. My daughter had made it clear she supported her mother's decision, but she still lived in my house and needed things like school permission slips, signed, and rides to activities. I wasn't going to punish Lila for her mother's choices, but I also wasn't going to make things easy for Ayla. "Lila can reach me directly if she needs anything. If Ayla wants to be involved, she can coordinate through me." My phone rang. Ayla again. This time I answered. "What did you do?" Her voice was sharp, angry. "I can't access anything." "I updated our household management system. Since you're living somewhere else for 30 days, I figured you wouldn't need access to our house." "That's ridiculous. I'm still Lila's mother." "Absolutely. And if Lila needs anything, she can call me and I'll handle it. Or you can call me and we can discuss it." "I tried calling you. You didn't answer." "I was busy. I'll get back to you when I have time." There was a long pause. "Trent, what are you doing?" "I'm respecting your decision to prioritize Doug's recovery over our family. You wanted 30 days to focus on him without distractions. I'm helping you achieve that goal." "That's not what this is about." "Sure it is. You've made your choice. Now you get to live with the consequences." I hung up and turned the phone off again. Richie was grinning. "You're really going to make her sweat this out for the full 30 days? "I'm going to do exactly what she asked for. She wanted space to help Doug recover. She's got it." "And after 30 days? I thought about the divorce papers I'd filed that morning, the lawyer I'd consulted, the documentation I'd been gathering. After 30 days, we'll see what's left to recover. 3 days into Ayla's 30-day recovery mission, I was starting to get a clearer picture of what was really happening. It came together piece by piece, like assembling a puzzle where someone had hidden half the pieces. The first piece arrived courtesy of Mrs. Dwyer, my 70-year-old neighbor who had made gossip into an art form. She cornered me while I was checking the mail, her small eyes bright with the thrill of having information someone else needed. "Saw your wife at the grocery store yesterday," she said without preamble. "She was buying quite a lot of food for someone who's supposed to be nursing an invalid." "Oh?" "Steaks, wine, fancy cheese. The kind of things you buy for a celebration, not a sick room." Mrs. Dwyer leaned closer, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "She looked happy, Trent. Really happy, like she was planning something special." I thanked Mrs. Dwyer and went back inside, but her words stuck with me. Ayla had looked happy. When was the last time she'd looked happy at home? When was the last time she'd bought steaks and wine for us? The second piece came from an unexpected source. Marnie, Ayla's co-worker and closest friend. She showed up at my door Thursday evening, looking uncomfortable and fidgety. "I probably shouldn't be here," she said when I opened the door, "but I thought you should know what people are saying." I invited her in and made coffee while she gathered her courage. Marnie had always been the type to collect gossip and secrets, but she was usually more careful about who she shared them with. "Ayla's been talking at work," she finally said, "about Doug, about their history together. She's been saying things that make it sound like maybe this recovery situation is more complicated than she told you." "What kind of things?" "She said Doug was the one who got away, that she's always wondered what would have happened if they'd stayed together after college." Marnie fidgeted with her coffee cup. She said being around him again has made her realize what she's been missing. There it was. The truth Ayla hadn't been willing to admit, maybe not even to herself. This wasn't about helping someone recover from an illness. This was about rekindling an old flame and seeing if the grass really was greener on the other side. "There's more," Marnie continued. "Doug's been telling people around town that he and Ayla are getting back together. He's been saying it's just a matter of time before she leaves you permanently." I set down my coffee cup carefully, fighting the urge to throw it against the wall. "He's been saying that publicly?" "At Murphy's bar, at the auto parts store, anywhere guys gather to talk. He's bragging about stealing another man's wife." The third piece of the puzzle came from Richie, who had been doing some investigating of his own. He called me Friday morning with information that tied everything together. "I did some digging into Doug's financial situation," he said. "Remember how I mentioned those cash deposits? Well, it turns out they started about 6 weeks ago, right around the time Ayla began staying late at work for special projects." "Special projects?" That's what she told her boss. Said she was working on a consulting gig in her spare time. Guess who her consulting client was? I didn't need to guess. Doug. Bingo. She's been funneling money to him for weeks, probably from her personal savings. The recovery story was just cover for moving in together permanently. I sat in my truck outside Doug's car lot that afternoon, watching through binoculars as Ayla and Doug worked together in his office. They weren't acting like a nurse and patient. They were acting like a couple planning a future together. Doug's lot was a collection of aging vehicles arranged around a double-wide trailer that served as his office. Hand-painted signs promised honest deals and no credit, no problem. The kind of place that attracted customers who couldn't get financing anywhere else. Through the office window, I could see Ayla at Doug's desk, working on a laptop while he stood behind her, his hands on her shoulders. They were both smiling, both relaxed, both acting like people who had nothing to hide because they thought no one was watching. I took photos with my phone, making sure to capture the timestamps and location data. Then I drove to the bank and requested account statements for the past 2 months. As the primary account holder, I had the right to see where our money was going. The statements told the story Richie had suspected. Ayla had been making regular transfers from our joint savings account to her personal checking account, then writing checks to Hennessy Automotive Consulting, $15,000 over 6 weeks, $15,000 of our money funding Doug's business and supporting Ayla's fantasy of a different life. That evening, Lila came home from school in a mood. She'd been cold and distant since Ayla left, treating me like I was the villain in this situation. But tonight, she seemed more upset than angry. "Some kids at school are saying things about Mom," she said, dropping her backpack by the door. "Stupid gossip stuff." "What kind of things?" "That she's having an affair. That she left us for her old boyfriend." Lila's voice cracked slightly. "I told them they were wrong, but what?" "I called Mom today to ask her something, and Doug answered her phone. He said she was in the shower and he'd have her call me back." Lila looked at me with confusion and hurt in her eyes. Why would he answer her phone, Dad? And why was she taking a shower at his place in the middle of the day? I sat down next to my daughter, choosing my words carefully. What do you think might be going on? I don't know. Maybe there's an innocent explanation. Maybe there is. But we both knew there wasn't. Lila was 17, not 7. She understood the implications of Doug answering her mother's phone while Ayla was in the shower. She just wasn't ready to admit it yet. Dad, what are you going to do? I looked at my daughter, this young woman who was about to learn some hard truths about the adults in her life. I'm going to protect our family, whatever that takes. What does that mean? It means your mother made a choice to prioritize someone else over us. Now she gets to live with the consequences of that choice. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, I found a photo of Ayla and Doug at a restaurant in the next town over, sitting close together, holding hands across the table. The message read, "Thought you should see this. A friend." I showed the photo to Lila, who stared at it for a long moment before handing the phone back to me. She lied to us, Lila said quietly. Yes, she did. What happens now? I thought about the divorce papers, the bank statements, the documentation I'd been gathering. Now we find out what the truth is really worth. The annual spring charity picnic was scheduled for the third Saturday of Ayla's 30-day recovery mission. Every year the whole town gathered in Riverside Park to raise money for various local causes, eat overpriced barbecue, and catch up on gossip. This year, I decided to give them something really worth talking about. I spent the week before the picnic making preparations. First, I volunteered to help with the event setup, specifically the audio-visual equipment for the afternoon's presentations. The organizers were thrilled to have someone with technical experience handle the sound system and projection screen. Next, I reached out to the event coordinator and suggested that we honor some community members who had been particularly generous with their time and resources lately. I specifically recommended recognizing Ayla and Doug for their collaborative efforts in community health and wellness. The coordinator loved the idea. Nothing made small-town event planners happier than spontaneous opportunities to celebrate local citizens. Meanwhile, Ayla's situation was becoming more complicated. Her boss at the tech firm had started asking questions about her extended absence and the consulting work she'd been doing on company time. Marnie, feeling guilty about her role in covering for Ayla, had finally admitted to management that she'd been handling Ayla's workload while Ayla focused on personal projects. She's in real trouble at work, Marnie told me when she called Thursday night. They're talking about suspension, maybe termination. She's been using company resources for personal business, and that's a fireable offense. What kind of company resources? The laptop, the company car for trips to Doug's lot, even the corporate credit card for some of those expensive dinners? Marnie sounded genuinely worried. I tried to warn her, but she said everything would work out once Doug's business got back on track. And how's that going? Not well. Turns out Doug's been exaggerating his business prospects. The investor he was bragging about pulled out last week when they actually looked at his books. Now he's in worse shape than when this all started. Friday afternoon, I received a call from Lila's school. She'd been in a fight with another student who had made comments about her mother. Nothing serious, but it was clear that the gossip was affecting my daughter more than she wanted to admit. I picked Lila up early and took her for ice cream, something we hadn't done together in months. Everyone's talking about it, she said, stirring her sundae without eating it. About Mom and Doug, about you filing for divorce, about our family falling apart. I'm sorry you're dealing with that. Are you really? Because sometimes it feels like you want people to talk about it. I considered her words carefully. I want people to know the truth. Your mother has been lying to everyone, including us. Sometimes the truth is uncomfortable, but that doesn't make it wrong to tell. But did you have to file for divorce so quickly? Couldn't you have tried to work things out first? Lila, your mother didn't just make a mistake. She planned this. She's been moving money around for weeks, lying to her boss, lying to us. This isn't something that happened suddenly. How do you know all that? I pulled out my phone and showed her the bank statements, the photos from Doug's car lot, the text messages between Ayla and Marnie that Marnie had forwarded to me. Evidence of a relationship and a plan that had been in motion long before Ayla announced her 30-day nursing mission. Lila read through everything in silence, her expression growing more troubled with each revelation. "She really planned this whole thing," she said finally. "Yes. And she was going to leave us anyway, eventually. That's what the evidence suggests." Lila pushed her ice cream away, no longer interested in eating. "I feel so stupid for defending her." "You're not stupid. You're loyal. That's a good quality, even when it's misplaced." Saturday morning dawned clear and warm, perfect weather for the charity picnic. I arrived early to set up the sound system and test the projection equipment. Everything worked perfectly, including the wireless connection to my laptop that would allow me to display presentations from anywhere in the park. Ayla and Doug arrived around noon, both dressed casually but nicely, both acting like a couple attending a community event together. They held hands while walking around the booths, shared a plate of barbecue, and generally behaved like people who had nothing to hide. The formal presentations were scheduled to begin at 2 o'clock. Local business owners would speak about their charitable contributions, community leaders would thank volunteers, and various awards would be presented. I was scheduled to make a brief presentation recognizing outstanding community collaboration. At exactly 2:15, I took the microphone. "Good afternoon, everyone. I want to take a moment to recognize two members of our community who have been working very closely together on an important project." I gestured toward Ayla and Doug, who were sitting together near the front of the crowd. Trent Ardell and Doug Hennessy have been collaborating intensively for the past several weeks on what they call a recovery project. Ayla looked confused but pleased by the recognition. Doug grinned and waved at the crowd. "Their collaboration has been so comprehensive," I continued, "that Ayla has actually moved in with Doug to provide round-the-clock assistance with his recovery. She's been there for 18 days now, and I thought everyone should see just how dedicated she's been to this project." I clicked to the first slide on my presentation. A photo of Ayla and Doug holding hands at the restaurant, timestamp clearly visible. The crowd murmured. Ayla's face went pale. As you can see, their working relationship has been very hands-on. Click. Another photo, this one of them embracing in the parking lot of Doug's car lot. Ayla has been providing Doug with extensive personal attention. "Trent, stop this!" Ayla's voice carried across the suddenly quiet crowd. "Oh, I'm just getting started. See, everyone thinks Ayla has been nursing Doug through some mysterious illness, but the reality is much more interesting." Click. A screenshot of the bank transfers. Ayla has actually been providing Doug with financial therapy, $15,000 worth of therapy to be exact. The crowd was completely silent now, everyone staring at the projection screen where the evidence of Ayla's deception was displayed in detail. "And the best part," I said, "is that Ayla documented the whole timeline herself. She put the dates right in our family calendar, 30 days of recovery time. Very organized, very thoughtful." Doug stood up, his face red with anger and embarrassment. "You can't do this, man. This is private business." "Actually, Doug, when you start bragging around town about stealing another man's wife, it stops being private business. When you answer my wife's phone while she's in the shower at your place, it becomes everyone's business." Several people in the crowd gasped. Mrs. Dwyer nodded knowingly, clearly pleased that her gossip instincts had been validated. Ayla tried to run, but the crowd was too thick, and she was trapped in the middle of it. Doug attempted to follow her, but tripped over a cooler and went down hard, landing face first in someone's potato salad. "I'd offer you a napkin, Doug," I called out, "but you're used to cleaning up your own messes." The crowd erupted in nervous laughter and excited chatter. Phones came out as people started taking pictures and recording videos. Within minutes, the whole scene would be all over social media. I clicked to the final slide, a photo of our family calendar with Ayla's 30-day entry highlighted. So, let's all wish Ayla and Doug well in their recovery project. They've got 12 more days to figure out what they're recovering from. I handed the microphone back to the event coordinator and walked away, leaving Ayla and Doug to deal with the aftermath of their public humiliation. Behind me, I could hear Ayla crying and Doug swearing as he tried to clean potato salad out of his hair. The crowd was buzzing with excitement, already spreading the story to anyone who hadn't been there to see it firsthand. My phone buzzed with a text from Richie. "Holy crap, man, that was epic." Another text, this one from Marnie. "Ayla's boss was here. Saw the whole thing. She's definitely fired." And a third, from an unknown number. "Your wife and Doug just left the park. They looked pretty upset." I drove home slowly, taking the long way through town. By the time I got there, I had 17 missed calls from Ayla and 43 text messages from various friends, neighbors, and acquaintances who wanted to know if what they'd heard about the picnic was really true. I turned off my phone and sat on my front porch, enjoying the quiet afternoon. In 12 days, Ayla's 30-day recovery mission would be officially over. But based on what had just happened at the picnic, I had a feeling the real recovery was just beginning. The motel call came on day 28 of Ayla's 30-day recovery mission. She sounded desperate, defeated, and willing to negotiate. "Trent, we need to talk. Really talk. About everything." I was in my workshop, organizing tools and enjoying the peace that had settled over my life since the charity picnic. The whole town knew the truth now, which meant I didn't have to pretend anymore. No more polite questions about how Ayla was doing. No more awkward conversations about her extended absence. Everyone understood exactly what kind of recovery she'd been providing Doug. "I'm listening," I said. "Not over the phone. Can we meet somewhere? Somewhere private where we can figure this out?" "Figure what out?" "Our marriage, our family. How to fix this mess." I almost laughed. After everything that had happened, Ayla still thought this was something that could be fixed with the right conversation. She still believed she could manipulate her way back into the life she'd abandoned. "Where did you have in mind?" "There's a motel on Route 9, the Pineview Inn. Room 12. Can you meet me there tonight at 8? The Pineview Inn was exactly the kind of place you'd expect for this conversation. Faded paint, broken neon sign, rooms that rented by the hour or the week depending on your circumstances. It was also the same motel where Doug had been living since his house went into foreclosure the week before. "I'll be there," I said. What Ayla didn't know was that I wouldn't be coming alone. I spent the afternoon making phone calls and sending carefully worded text messages. By evening, I had assembled quite an audience for what I suspected would be Ayla's final performance. Lila agreed to come after I explained that it was time for her to hear the whole truth directly from her mother. She'd been living in a state of confused loyalty since the picnic, angry at Ayla, but still hoping there was some explanation that would make sense of everything. Marnie agreed to attend as a witness to the workplace violations that had cost Ayla her job. Her boss, Jennifer Walsh, also agreed to come after I explained that there might be additional company property that needed to be recovered. I even convinced Principal Sims from Lila's school to attend. As an education professional, he was concerned about the impact of family instability on student performance, and he wanted to understand the situation better. The final guest was someone Ayla wouldn't expect. A private investigator named Tom Bradley who had been documenting Doug's financial crimes for his creditors. Tom had discovered that Doug had been using Ayla's money not just to fund his failing business, but to pay off gambling debts and avoid some very unpleasant people who were looking for him. I arrived at the Pineview Inn at 7:45 and parked where I could see room 12. Ayla's car was already there, along with Doug's pickup truck. Through the thin curtains, I could see them moving around inside, probably preparing for what they thought would be a private negotiation. At exactly 8 o'clock, I knocked on the door. Ayla opened it, looking surprised to see me but trying to appear confident. Thank you for coming. Wouldn't miss it. I stepped inside and immediately understood why she'd chosen this location. The room was set up like a stage, with 2 chairs facing each other and a small table between them. Very intimate, very controlled. Ayla had probably planned every detail of this conversation, from the lighting to the seating arrangement. Doug sat on the bed, trying to look casual, but obviously nervous. "Hey, Trent. Glad we can finally talk this through like adults." "Absolutely. In fact, I brought some other adults who wanted to be part of the conversation." Before Ayla could react, I opened the door and gestured for the others to come in. Lila entered first, followed by Marnie, Jennifer Walsh, Principal Sims, and finally Tom Bradley, with his briefcase full of documentation. "What is this?" Ayla's voice was sharp with panic. "I said we needed to talk privately." "And we are talking privately. This is just our private group instead of your private group." Doug stood up from the bed, clearly ready to bolt. "This is crazy, man. We don't need all these people here." "Actually, Doug, we do. See, everyone here has been affected by your recovery project in one way or another. I thought they deserved to hear the truth directly from you and Ayla." Tom Bradley opened his briefcase and pulled out a digital recorder. "Mr. Hennessy, I'm Tom Bradley, private investigator. I've been hired by several of your creditors to locate assets that might be available for debt recovery. I understand Mrs. Ardell has been providing you with substantial financial assistance." "That's none of your business," Doug said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Actually, it is my business when that assistance was used to pay gambling debts instead of legitimate business expenses." Tom placed several photographs on the small table. "These were taken at the casino in Atlantic City last weekend. You and Mrs. Ardell enjoying the high roller tables with money that was supposed to be funding your car lot." Ayla stared at the photos, her face going white. "Doug, you said that money was for business expenses." "It was business. I was trying to win enough to pay off the creditors." "By gambling?" "It was a sure thing. I had a system." Lila spoke up from her position near the door. "Mom, is this really what you left us for? To fund this guy's gambling addiction?" "It's not like that, honey. Doug was sick. He needed help getting back on his feet." "He's not sick," Tom Bradley said calmly. "He's a compulsive gambler with substantial debts to some very dangerous people. The illness story was cover for the fact that he's been hiding from loan sharks for the past 2 months. Jennifer Walsh stepped forward. "Mrs. Ardell, I need to inform you that your employment with our company has been terminated. Using company resources for personal business is a violation of your contract, and the board has decided to pursue legal action to recover the funds you misappropriated." "I didn't misappropriate anything. I was doing consulting work." "Consulting work that involved using our company credit card to pay for hotel rooms and restaurant bills for your personal relationship with Mr. Hennessy." The room fell silent, except for the sound of the air conditioning unit struggling to cool the overcrowded space. Ayla looked around at the faces surrounding her, finally understanding that her carefully planned conversation had become a tribunal. "This isn't fair," she said. "You're all ganging up on me." "We're telling you the truth," I said. "The same truth you've been running from for the past month." "I was trying to help someone I cared about." "You were trying to recapture something from your past, and you were willing to destroy our family to do it." I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder app. "But before we go any further, I want everyone to hear something." I played the recording I'd made 3 days earlier when Doug had called me drunk and angry after learning that his creditors had found him. In the recording, Doug admitted that the whole recovery story had been his idea, a way to get Ayla to leave me and bring her money with her. He bragged about manipulating her emotions and laughed about how easy it had been to convince her that he needed saving. "You see, Ayla," I said when the recording finished, "you weren't helping Doug recover. You were helping him run a con game, and you were the mark." Ayla sank into one of the chairs, finally understanding the full scope of what had happened to her life. "Doug, tell them that's not true." Doug was already putting on his jacket. "Sorry, babe, but this party's getting too crowded for me." He headed for the door, but Tom Bradley stepped in front of him. "Mr. Hennessy, I'm afraid you can't leave just yet. There are some people outside who would like to speak with you about your outstanding debts." Through the window, we could see two large men in expensive suits standing next to a black sedan. They didn't look like the kind of people who accepted excuses or payment plans. Doug's face went gray. "You can't do this to me, man. I'm sick. I need medical attention." "The only thing you need," I said, "is to face the consequences of your choices, just like Ayla is about to do." I turned to my daughter, who had been watching this entire scene with a mixture of horror and fascination. "Lila, do you have any questions for your mother?" Lila looked at Ayla for a long moment. "Just one. Was any of it true? Were you ever really trying to help him? Or was this all just about getting away from us?" Ayla opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. For the first time in our entire marriage, she seemed to be considering telling the complete truth. "I don't know," she said finally. "I thought I was helping him, but maybe I was just helping myself feel important again. Feel wanted." "And was it worth it?" Lila asked. Ayla looked around the shabby motel room, at the faces of people whose respect she'd lost, at Doug cowering by the window as his creditors waited outside. "No," she whispered, "it wasn't worth any of it." I stood up and headed for the door. "Then I guess your recovery is complete." Day 30 arrived with the kind of crisp spring morning that makes you believe in new beginnings. I woke up early, made coffee, and sat on my front porch watching the sun rise over our neighborhood. In a few hours, Ayla's 30-day recovery mission would be officially over, but the real ending had already happened 3 nights ago in that motel room. My phone had been quiet since then. No more desperate calls from Ayla, no more angry texts from Doug. According to Richie, who had excellent sources for this kind of information, Doug had worked out a payment plan with his creditors that involved signing over what was left of his car lot and leaving town permanently. Ayla had checked into a different motel, this one on the other side of the county, and was apparently trying to figure out what to do with the wreckage of her life. Lila came downstairs around 8, already dressed for school. She'd been different since the confrontation at the Pineview Inn. Quieter, but somehow more mature. The illusions about her mother had been painful to lose, but she seemed relieved to finally understand what had really been happening. "Any word from Mom?" she asked, pouring herself a glass of orange juice. "Not directly. Her lawyer called yesterday to discuss the divorce proceedings." "How's that going?" "Smoothly. When one spouse abandons the family and empties the savings account to fund someone else's gambling addiction, the legal process becomes pretty straightforward." Lila nodded, accepting this information with the pragmatic resignation of someone who had learned not to expect better news. "What about college? Will we still be able to afford it?" "Absolutely. Your college fund was in a separate account that your mother couldn't access. Plus, I've been talking to a financial advisor about managing things going forward. We'll be fine." "What about Mom? Will she be fine?" I considered the question carefully. Ayla had lost her job, her savings, her marriage, and her daughter's respect. She was facing potential legal action from her former employer and had no clear prospects for rebuilding her life. But she was also a smart, capable woman who had made a series of terrible choices. Whether she'd be fine depended entirely on what she chose to do next. "That's up to her," I said finally. "She created this situation. Now she gets to figure out how to fix it." The divorce papers were finalized that afternoon. Ayla didn't contest anything, which made the process quick and efficient. I kept the house, the vehicles, and custody of Lila. Ayla kept her personal belongings and whatever was left in her checking account after Doug's creditors finished with her. The settlement also included a restraining order that prohibited Ayla from contacting me directly except through our lawyers. She was allowed supervised visits with Lila, but only if Lila requested them. So far, Lila hadn't made any such requests. I was cleaning out Ayla's closet when I found the journal. It was hidden behind a box of old shoes, a leather-bound notebook that I'd never seen before. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. The entries went back 6 months, documenting Ayla's growing dissatisfaction with our marriage and her increasing contact with Doug. She'd started by looking him up on social media, then progressed to casual text messages, then phone calls, then secret meetings. The journal revealed a woman who had convinced herself that her life had been a mistake and that Doug represented the path not taken. The final entry was dated the day before she announced her 30-day recovery mission. Tomorrow, I tell Trent about helping Doug. I know he'll be angry, but maybe this is the push we both need to finally end this marriage. I've been pretending to be happy for too long. Doug needs me, really needs me, and that feels better than anything I've had with Trent in years. 30 days should be enough time to figure out if Doug and I have a real future together. If we do, I'll ask Trent for a divorce. If we don't, I'll come back and try to make the best of things. Either way, at least I'll know. I closed the journal and added it to the box of items that would be delivered to Ayla's new address. She'd been planning this for months, using Doug's supposed illness as cover for what was essentially a trial separation. The recovery story had been a lie from the beginning, designed to make her abandonment of our family seem noble instead of selfish. But she'd made one critical error in her planning. She'd underestimated me. Ayla had assumed I would react emotionally, that I would beg her to stay or threaten to leave if she went. She'd expected drama, tears, and eventually capitulation. Instead, I'd given her exactly what she'd asked for and documented every step of the process. Now she was discovering that actions have consequences, that 30 days of selfish choices could destroy a lifetime of relationships and security. The final scene played out at the Riverview Griddle, where I'd gone for dinner with Lila and Richie. We were celebrating the end of a difficult chapter and the beginning of whatever came next. The conversation was light, focused on Lila's upcoming graduation and summer plans. That's when Ayla walked in. She looked terrible. Her clothes were wrinkled, her hair unwashed, her face showing the strain of the past month. She spotted us immediately and walked over to our table, ignoring the stares and whispers from other diners who recognized her from the charity picnic incident. "Trent, please, can we talk?" "We have nothing to talk about. Your 30 days are up. The divorce is final. You made your choice." "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. But people make mistakes and marriages are supposed to survive them." "Marriages are supposed to survive mistakes," I agreed. "But what you did wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. You documented it yourself in that journal you left behind." Ayla's face went pale. She'd forgotten about the journal, probably forgotten about a lot of things in the chaos of the past few days. "Lila, honey, please. I'm still your mother. We can work this out as a family." Lila looked up from her dinner, her expression calm and resolved. "Mom, you stopped being part of our family the day you moved in with Doug. You chose him over us. Now you get to live with that choice." "But I love you. I love both of you." "No," I said, standing up from the table. "You love the idea of us. You love having us as a backup plan when your other options don't work out. But you don't love us enough to actually choose us when it matters." Ayla started crying, the kind of desperate tears that were meant to generate sympathy and second chances. A few months ago, they might have worked. But I'd learned too much about manipulation and emotional blackmail to be affected by the performance. 30 days, Ayla," I said quietly. "You asked for 30 days to figure out what you really wanted. Well, you figured it out. You wanted Doug, his gambling debts, his creditors, and his lies. You got all of that. What you don't get is to come back here and pretend it never happened." I left money on the table for our dinner and walked toward the exit, Lila and Richie following behind me. At the door, I turned back to look at Ayla one last time. She was still sitting at our table, crying into her hands while the entire diner watched her fall apart. It should have made me feel sorry for her. Instead, it just made me feel tired. Outside, Lila took my arm as we walked to the truck. "Do you think she'll be okay?" "Eventually. She's smart enough to rebuild her life if she really wants to, but that's not our problem anymore." "I know. It's just hard to watch someone destroy themselves like that." "The hardest part," I said, "is accepting that you can't save people from their own choices. You can warn them, you can try to help them, but ultimately they have to decide what kind of person they want to be." We drove home through the quiet streets of our small town, past the houses where normal families were settling in for ordinary evenings. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities, but tonight we were just grateful to have survived the storm. 30 days had been enough time for Ayla to lose everything that mattered, but it had also been enough time for Lila and me to discover that we were stronger than we'd realized, that we could build a good life without someone who didn't want to be part of it. The calendar entry was still there in my phone, a digital monument to the day my marriage ended and my real life began. March 15th through April 14th. 30 days, that changed everything. I marked it complete and deleted the reminder. There was no need to remember the dates anymore. Some chapters were meant to stay closed,